Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ. This episode of JJ Meets World features Clare Lynch. She teaches XABeat, which is a dance fitness class that has had to adapt during this time of COVID-19. Plus, we talk a little bit about theater. We talk about working in a craft store and why, if you pay full price for crafts, you are a chump. And Tucker and I take a little deep dive into board game history and what this pandemic may provide in the future. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World with our special guest, Clare Lynch. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
The year is 1948, and a woman by the name of Eleanor Abbott, while recovering from polio in San Diego, California, invented a game that she tested with children in the same hospital wards that she was in. The children suggested that Abbott submit the game to the Milton Bradley Company. The game was bought by Milton Bradley and first published in 1949 as a temporary fill-in for their main product line, which was school supplies. And what was unique about this particular game is it featured one of the children wearing a polio leg brace. This game goes on to become Milton Bradley's best-selling game, surpassing its previous top seller, which was Uncle Wiggily, and put the company in the same league as Parker Brothers. The original art might have been done by Abbott. She may have had a hand in it, but they don't really know. The game is Candyland, which we've actually talked about many times on this podcast. But this is what I want to kind of throw out there. This game in 1948 was invented during the polio epidemic that the world was facing, and polio was such a very similar today with COVID-19. Polio didn't care if you were the richest person in America or you were about to be evicted from your home. And I am amazed that this game, which in all honesty is as popular today as the day it came out, I think you're hard pressed to find a home with children in it that does not have a copy of Candyland. And
I'm pretty sure it was the first board game I ever played.
I think so many people, it was the first board game they ever played.
It's one of those games where the game is decided with the shuffle of cards right beforehand, and then you're basically just sort of playing it out. But I remember distinctly, even just sort of as a kid, just poring over the game board itself and like really falling in love with the characters and the different like zones, and it made me imagine this Candyland world. I think the only other game that had that effect on me was probably Chutes and Ladders. One of those two came first for me. I'm pretty sure it was Candyland.
And so, you know what I always loved about Candyland is it wasn't just one type of candy either. I mean, they did such a good job in making these different places. You know, you'd end up in the peppermint forest, and they had a lumberjack who cut down the giant peppermint canes, and no one ever wanted to get stuck in what was the goopy guy at the top, like the molasses pit or something like that.
We'll have to dive deeper into Wikipedia. I'm not quite sure.
But it kind of begs the question of, okay, so if this comes out of the imagination of somebody who's in a polio ward with children, what does a game to pass the time during the COVID-19 era look like? And have we opened up a door for people to take this time and say, gosh, you know, this is something that sparks imagination. It can be played over and over and over again. And it's a fairly simple concept so that people, children can enjoy it and parents, can enjoy playing it with their kids. Also, what's unique about Candyland is depending on who goes first and where you're seated, those are the only controllable options for Candyland.
Right. That's right.
Everything else is, I believe Alex Davey, when he was on the podcast, said Candyland is manifest destiny.
Right.
And it's a unique thought that I had recently. And so I took a little Wikipedia trip to figure out, okay, so what is Candyland? And Tucker and I are playing a across the city version of Monopoly, and we had a wonderful time playing that. And it sounds like it's going to become our new digital pastime as a way to keep connected and playing a game. And if you are interested, it's $3.99 to buy the Monopoly app. But it seems pretty cool because you can play online with strangers, or you can play online and set up a private group, and you can play singly just with an AI, like going off against 3 AIs if you really want. But
that's a game where, I mean, there's definitely much more strategy and you can turn the tide. But I got trounced in that game. And early on with the initial dice rolls where we're all picking up property, I mean, you can kind of see the game going in one direction already at that point. And it doesn't mean that it's a fixed point, but I was basically I had the lesser hand for most of the game. But then my favorite thing happened in the game where you and I basically entered a round where we were just negotiating back and forth, trying to make a trade deal that I think took longer than the rest of the game actually took. Because we kept counter-offering and counter-offering and counter-offering. And then we finally reached a deal. And shortly after that deal, I had a glimmer of hope where I said, you know what, this could actually work out in my favor. But then nope, I got crushed after that. So I look forward to our rematch, sir.
I'm very excited as well. And win or lose, it was one of probably the best nights I've had during this whole thing. I mean, I ended up winning, so it was really nice. But it was just fun to be able to have an interaction like that. I miss the sound of the pieces hitting the board, the like clip, 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 as people are counting. And we'll do that again one day. But for now, this is just as good as it gets.
Well, and it's amazing, I think, too, the ways that all of us have had to embrace the technology that's available to us to try to maintain some level of normalcy in our regular lives. So you and I might normally play a board game seated across an actual table from each other. We're obviously recording this podcast in a way that we typically don't. And today's podcast guest, she basically had to embrace the Zoom technology we're all using so that she can keep conducting the XABeat classes that she is routinely teaching. And when I had first heard that she had to do that, I thought that sounds like it's really, really disruptive, but it sounds like they're making it work, right?
Oh, it sounds like she is, in a way, this has forced her to find a brand new avenue that she's actually really enjoying. Right. As part of it. Clare Lynch is our guest today. We actually have had Claire's sister on the podcast, Rachel. And so we talk a little bit about that previous podcast. And for maximum enjoyment, when you're done with this episode, seek out the episode with her sister, Rachel Gaynor. I think that this podcast is probably just one of the best just little conversations we've had. It goes all over the place, and it'll be the type of thing where I think listeners are going to want to interject a thought during this. And I suggest that you do that. Even if you know in the back of your mind that you are talking to nobody, I'm listening. Somewhere out there, I'm listening. And if you want to shout in front of my house, you're more than welcome to do that. And I'm going to open the window and tell you to be quiet, or I'm going to call the cops. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World with our very special guest, Clare Lynch.
JJ Meets World.
Clare Lynch, welcome to JJ Meets World. So excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start with this. XABeat, that's how you say it, right? Like XABeat.
XABeat.
So tell us what this is.
Yeah, so it's a dance fitness program. Everyone's heard of Zumba, right? Zumba is this big international franchise that totally revolutionized and brought dance fitness to the forefront of fitness communities. And XABeat is something that was formed locally out of Fargo about 10 years ago. Actually, we were supposed to have a big 10-year celebration in Florida this this month, but that's not happening. Anyway, yeah, it was formed by some former Zumba instructors because Zumba has a lot of requirements in order to keep their brand intact, as they should. That it's really focused on Latin dance and specific kinds of moves, and these particular instructors in Fargo decided that they wanted to be able to choreograph their own stuff and they wanted to do more like pop and hip hop. And so they just formed their own dance fitness company. It was called Dance Fit for a while. And then it was rebranded to XABeat to be a little less generic sounding. And it's just so fun. I love it with all of my heart and soul, which I never would have expected.
I think what's interesting about this is there's so many people out there who say, gosh, I wish I was doing something physical. I wish I was getting healthy. I wish I was doing something, but it's so much work to do it. But it sounds like you've actually found something that brings you a great amount of pleasure. And it doesn't seem like work.
Absolutely. So I was not an active person for the majority of my life. I was I couldn't get a basketball and a hoop to save my life. Couldn't run, couldn't I just it was sports and physical activity were things that the other kids did while I was in the corner with my knitting needles and with my books and sucking up to teachers and all the things that I did in high school. And that just wasn't part of my identity, right? Like other people did that. I'm on the couch with my nose buried in a book. And, in college, it started to occur to me that, number one, I'm an actor. I should be taking care of my body as an instrument of my craft. And also, it's just not very fun when the teenager metabolism finally slows down and you start to not feel like yourself in your own body anymore and feel like, oh, I should be able to take control of this. So I tried running, I guess, but it was like running makes your knees sore, it makes your ankles sore. It's so boring. And eventually I decided to try group fitness classes because I thought, well, I'm someone who does really well in a classroom setting, like educationally. Maybe it would work for me in a fitness perspective too. And it changed my whole life. Like it turned my whole brain around the way I think about fitness. Like, did you know that endorphins are actually real?
Really?
Like you actually feel good after exercising if you're doing something that you're having fun doing. I had no idea. I always thought it was a myth.
It's not something that people said to try and make you exercise. Like, oh, you'll enjoy it so much. You'll get a great
you'll get a runner's
romance.
High. No, you won't. Or some people do, but I don't. But when you're dancing, it's just you're listening to music and you're having fun and you feel good and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I look awesome. Like it was a mental health boost for me. It was a physical health boost. It was everything about my life became better when I started doing it.
So let me ask you this. Now that you've been doing it, do you ever talk to people who had that same mentality and you're now the person who's pushing, listen, you're going to love it. It's going to be exercise. You're going to have a great time. I promise.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I'm having more success with those conversations now that I'm doing it online. I think that when people are able to do it from the comfort of their own home and they know that no one's watching them and they also know that they can try it for 10 minutes and then leave if they don't like it, that barrier of entry has become a lot narrower. So in many ways it's worse. The classes literally aren't as good because there's a tiny bit of motion blur sometimes, and like you can't see yourself in the mirror. But in a lot of ways it's better because more people are willing to try it.
I think that trying something new is something that goes hand in hand with diet culture. And I always try and stress to people, like, listen, diet and exercise are not the same thing. You know,
Absolutely not.
right? And I feel like people make that mistake of like, weight loss can include those. It can be part of the umbrella, and living a healthy lifestyle, an umbrella that includes both of those things. But people think, oh, I I'm on a diet, and so I'm trying to do 5 miles a day on my Fitbit, and go like, well, okay, so I've always been a big proponent of like, you lose pounds on the plate, but you make yourself a healthier by engaging in exercise.
I agree with that completely. I was teaching XABeat for about 6 months before I made serious changes to my diet. And I had like the mental health benefits and like the increased energy and sleeping better and stuff when I was just doing the exercise. Diet is what caused me to lose weight. And I want to be really careful how I talk about losing weight, because no like body type is more valid than any other body type.
Totally.
I just wanted to choose not continuing to gain weight. Like I felt like I had lost control of my body, and I didn't like when I had to buy new clothes, not because the clothes were worn out, but because I was outgrowing them. So I chose to add diet to my exercise because I wanted to feel like I was in control of that.
I took a hard look. It's amazing how fast years can slip by. Because I feel like just yesterday I was 20 years old, but now I'm 36, and I had kind of this aha moment a few years ago when I started taking my health seriously, which was my grandfather died at age 50, putting the storm windows in. My dad died at 51, complications from cancer.
Wow.
And I thought,
Yeah.
I, if that's truly the case, I've got 15 years to be the oldest living member, like man, in that side of my family's line. So if I make it to 52, if I last 16 more years, I am now the oldest living person from 3 generations of my direct family. And 52 is not old. 52 is very young.
That is
And
one hell of a reality check.
it is.
16 years is not many years.
It's not. Oh, and especially when you
That's 2
think of like
double-term presidencies.
right. Oh God. And, I mean, really, when you think about it, it's only 20 Marvel movies. So I got a lot I gotta last through. And so, my grandfather was a postal delivery man, and was a lean guy, worked in a farming community, and he had a heart attack. So you have to think, well, there's probably a history of heart disease. And given, they didn't do the nicest things to their body when it came to, watching some of those fats and cholesterol. My dad smoked. He was a drinker. And so that, the cancer formed in his tongue to begin with. And so that has direct correlations there. But I am a heavy guy. Ever since I was in 6th grade, I have always had a heaviness to me. In fact, I inherited just an amazing set of male breasts from my grandfather on my mother's side.
I picture like your grandmother, like, I've got something special for you your grandfather wanted to have, and she opens like an heirloom chest and like pulls out like on satin cloth these 2 male breasts and gives them to you. That's how I'm picturing this happening.
Oh, and he was an avid swimmer, and so you if you spent the weekend at Grandpa's lake place, that was something you saw no matter what.
Yeah, you did see him floating around ahead of him.
Right. Yeah. there are like 3 parts of his body that crest the water when he's doing a float, and his nipples are one of them. But to me, it was important that I get a handle on this, and it wasn't that I wanted to, get down to a model weight. I was never going to model underpants for the Gap. And that's fine
Unless
because
the Gap has a more inclusive advertising campaign.
right. And they won't. That's why I shop at places like JCPenney that have a whole department dedicated to people who, like, I'm also 6'3". When I wear a regular t-shirt, it pulls up beyond my pant line. And so even finding something in a tall size is important to me. So I'm big and I'm tall. I'm definitely not husky. If you name your big and tall department husky, I am walking right on out of there. I am not a sled dog.
That branding doesn't work for you, huh?
No, it does not. Only because when I think about it, I was like, husky? No, I don't feel husky. I feel huggable. If the department was called Huggable, I'm in there, no sweat. So
now that's your $1 million idea from quarantine. You need to make a huggable clothing line.
It
makes primarily onesies.
Absolutely. It's really, that's what's going to save retail, is coming up with better ideas.
They call it Snugs and Hugs.
I also would like to pitch to the retail world, why don't you have clothes that are in my size that are the exact same for, let's say, toddler size? Because I would constantly be dressing my toddler up to look exactly like me. That is a missed market if I've ever seen one. No reaction to that. That's fine.
As the victim of many a cringy family photo from my childhood, your toddler probably won't mind it when they turn 16 that didn't exist.
Now we had your sister on the podcast as well, and so we got a deep dive into
there's a
life.
lot of Gaynertness. There's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I love that word, just Gaynertness. Oh, there's a lot of Gaynertness with this conversation right now.
And it makes it so. Did you guys all have matching stuff like in a photo, or what were the themes of the Gaynert family photos from years of yore?
Well, there's one from when I was a baby where we're all wearing nothing but bright red and white. Which is kind of like your standard. You look back at a family photo from the 90s, you're like, yeah, that's a 90s family photo. And my dad has like the big glasses, with the squared off top and taper bottom. But the really cringy ones. Did Rachel tell you about the family band?
Yes.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like this, redneck theme. And there is a family photo where we're all dressed up in redneck clothes, like think like German pioneer kind of things. And like sitting on like hay bales with a wooden wheel in the background. And we're all holding our instruments that we used in the family band. Mine was a metal washboard that was used as a percussion instrument, where I would stroke my fingers up and down the metal ridges, and it would make that, like with my fingers. I'm holding that, and I have a really unfortunate eye condition where I basically have one lazy eye when I'm not wearing my glasses. One eye turns in, and they gave me the glasses with no lenses in them so that there wouldn't be glare, and so I'm in my little German pioneer outfit, sitting on a hay bale, holding this metal washboard with one eye pointing to my nose.
And it's captured forever.
It is. And I mean, just the fact that there were 5 kids, it's a big group. It's a lot to take in. You look at every face and there's a story there. There's just a lot going on.
Okay, so Claire, tell me a little bit about who you are as a person, because at this point, I'm just curious to know, like who you are, what you like, what you wish people would appreciate more. Who are you?
I almost feel like we should have started with that question.
Okay. I think we've got a good base now to move on from.
Who are you really, Claire?
Wow, I wasn't expecting this on a Saturday morning. Okay.
Well, I'll help tee this up a bit. Claire is one of my fellow ensemble members at Theater B.
Yeah.
Claire has been, when did you start even becoming interested in theater? Because it's been a while now, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking about the gaynerdiness. The thing is, I was kind of the most quiet person out of a family of very big personalities. And we were all kind of into the same things. We were all really into theater. Both of my parents did theater in college. It's how they met. Both of my parents are really good directors. My dad is a really great musician, hence the family band. And so as the quietest person in that group, who also genuinely really enjoys the same things that my family enjoys, it's really easy to have like, a ready-made personality, be a gainer to add water. You're really into speech, you're really into theater, you're really into music. You're like, to be clear, not like into cool music. You're really into like church choir and band. I played the euphonium. And like, so in a way, like this sounds really lame, but in a way, XABeat was like the biggest example of me doing a thing that taking control of my own personality and interests, not in the first way, but in the biggest way, maybe. No one in the world told me to go to that gym. No one in the world told me to try group fitness. And no one thought that I would be a person who liked dance. It's not something that my family is into. And I found it. I loved it. I independently chose to make it a big part of who I am now.
So theater is a part of your life. What attracts you to the idea of theater?
I don't know. It's just something that I've always done. I love telling stories, and I love connecting with people, connecting with the other actors, in rehearsal and on stage. And I think theater is such a cool way to tell stories. And when you're in an audience and you feel like a show either sees you, like it's telling the story about you that you didn't know how to tell, or you feel like you're learning about something that you never, seeing something from a perspective that you never understood before. There's nothing in the world like it.
I think a lot of actors too. I rediscovered this last fall, but when you're doing a show, it is fun. It is amazingly fun and rewarding to perform for an audience. But the thing that I get the most out of it is rehearsals, working with a close group of artists, for 5 or more days a week. We're all making basically the same sacrifice of our time and our energy, and we're working as a team towards this piece of art that will only be in existence for a short period of time, and then it goes away. So it's all very sort of transitory in a way that film isn't, or music recording isn't, which leaves a permanent record for this one thing forever. And so just so many, I think that's one thing that most of us in the theater world are missing right now, is those rehearsals, that connection with a group of people in a room where you're working on something together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, the connection with the audience, it's just that feedback loop. You kind of get it in the comment section somewhat, but it's delayed, it's stinted, it's not as genuine. Like people have to make the choice to type something in there rather than just, hearing the organic laughter in the moment, or like the, ooh, feeling people shifting around in their seat.
I do love it when audience members don't think about it and they verbalize something when they're watching. Years ago when we did Rabbit Hole at Theater B, and I was playing this he was a teenager / young adult who in the pre-story to the show had accidentally killed a young child with his car. It was a total accident, but he was grappling with the guilt of it. And my scene starts with Lori Horvick, and I walk on stage, and this woman who I'm thinking was maybe in her 80s, just mid scene before we even say anything, she goes, "Oh, what a sad boy." And it was lovely and hilarious and distracting, but genuine at the same time. And Lori and I almost broke in the scene just from laughing about it. But it also felt so right that she was so invested in what was going on. She wasn't filtering anything that was coming out of her mouth.
You know, a lot of people, there are varying views on that kind of thing. Some people get really ticked off about it. As an actor, I love it. I love it so much. I would say the show that I've been in that had the most of that was The Moors.
Oh, right.
People verbalized their reactions to that show all the time because it was so freaking weird. And like the one that always got a verbal reaction from me was God loves women on their knees scrubbing. There was always like one or two feminists in the audience that are like, it was so fun.
I did Hand to God at Theater B when they're in the garage space, and the premise of the show is it's set in a small church basement in Texas, and a boy who's recently gone through the loss of his father is dealing with some stuff, and his hand puppet he makes may or may not be possessed by the devil. And I got to play the pastor of this church. That was my role. And part of that role included me being kind of lecherous and really manipulative the way I'm hitting on this now single mother. And
that was kind of gross.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So every single show from that, and I love this fact, was the audience was completely different. We had shows where nuns came and they didn't leave at intermission, which I thought was really great.
Like a group of nuns came, like on purpose?
About 7 of them. Like, and they're not wearing full habits, but they're still wearing like the headpiece, with
I'm familiar with this brand of nun. Yep.
Oh, okay, good. And I think part of it is they came to a show called Hand to God. I don't think that they necessarily knew the premise of the show. But God's in the title, so, let's go check it out. And like I said, they didn't leave halfway through, but I could hear them while we were performing just going like, oh my, oh goodness gracious. And on some nights, I felt the audience hate my character and just seethe. On other nights, I heard them like everything I said was a laugh riot. And it was the most interesting show I've ever been in, where the reactions are different every single time, where a single line of dialogue can be taken in any way depending on the audience mood. I wish we would have tracked, this is going to sound weird, but I wish we would have tracked the weather during that show, because there were blizzard performances. And there were there was a freak 60-degree day in February. And I think that the weather that the audience walked into the space affected the way that they felt about that show.
No way.
Yeah, I really do. I think like if it was blizzardy and it was dark when they came in, I think that they had a different feeling about the show than a day where it's bright and sunny and they get this sort of, minor miracle of a nice day in February. So I really think that had a difference.
I have to say, you were really fantastic in that show. And I still think about the scene where you walk in and the whole place is trashed because there was like that weird, awkward sex scene right beforehand where they trashed the room.
Yep.
And then you walk in and it's just you for like 2 minutes reacting to finding more things that are trashed and then like slapping the same poster up on the wall. I think about that. That's one of the funniest scenes I can remember seeing.
And it's weird because so I do a lot of improv, and so I'm used to being on stage without without knowing what's going to come next. But a scene that's mostly played with just like ugh, ah, and reactions like that was so hard for me. Because at one point, I want something to play off of a little bit, and you want little pieces that are going to happen. And knowing that it's out there felt very vulnerable. It felt very raw. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for saying that. And I should say this: the poster was designed by my then radio co-host Scotch Noel Anderson, who is our first guest. Was he our first guest on this podcast?
He
Tucker?
was our first guest, and he also created the JJ Meets World theme song.
Oh yeah,
No way.
yeah. I forget that because I never listened to the theme song anymore. But he created
You
that
don't
poster,
listen to your own podcast.
and the original poster that they were going to put up. It didn't seem personalized at all, and it didn't seem like it would really fulfill a joke. And so I thought, well, what if we get someone who can take a poster that just says "Thank you, Pastor Greg," and we maybe put an image of me in the poster. And so Scotch drew it. And the first time that Scotch drew it, and Scotch is known for kind of, he's been in Cracked magazine, and he did cartooning for Hustler for a while. He had these like kind of squinty eyes, and it seemed very like he's got his hands around these children, and it gave off the wrong vibe 100%. And so I saw the first edition he had done of that poster, and I said, hey, how about if you don't make it look like I'm collecting these children? What if you make it look more Disneyfied? And so sure enough, he took it and he made the big Disney eyes, and he took away, the lines that he added around the smile to make it look like it was a little devilish. And so, but I do have the original version of that poster, and I look at it from time to time because he really nailed kind of what was underneath the character of Pastor Greg, but you didn't want to let it out that early on in the show. So, okay, Claire, so when you're becoming another person, when you get to dive into a character, have you ever like had to just peel that skin off afterwards, where you go like, oh God, inhabiting this is just weird and awful?
Oh no, I've never inhabited a character I couldn't find something to like. Did you feel that way when you were doing Pastor Greg?
No, not so much, because I think he gets a nice piece of redemption at the end. Trying to save this young guy, and he gets pretty raw with him. But it made me uncomfortable for sure, at least until the 3/4 mark of that show, to be in it and to be this character who's smiling the whole time, but also having kind of like a devious nature behind him. I also found that with Pastor Greg, he didn't think what he was doing was inappropriate. He thought he was actually, he's like, you're lucky I'm paying extra attention to you. So I've chosen you to be someone who's going to have my affection. And that brought a different level to being just a skis.
I mean, it's at the very least, you want them to have some ability to be redeemed on some level. Otherwise, I've luckily never had to deal. I've had plenty of characters that were, absolute jerks for sure, but there was always something either tragic or somewhat redemptive, or even maybe you see the mistakes they're making, but you still understand them, even though you condemn the mistakes they're making, right?
Yeah, I mean, acting is like the ultimate empathy exercise, right? You're literally imagining what it's like to be this person in this situation. and then portraying it as authentically as you can. And so, yeah, I've never had an experience where I couldn't find something in a character to like or relate to, or find something in the character's backstory that explains who they are. Yeah, I don't know. I've never played a truly despicable character. Like, I've never played a villain. I don't know how my process would have to change if I played someone who I truly, like, on a personal level hated. I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Tucker and I knew a kid named Max Westland, who, unfortunately for Max, was always cast as the villain. We did.
He was so good at it.
Yeah, in high school, we did the Music Man. He was going to be the anvil salesman who ruins everything.
Is there an anvil salesman?
Yeah. Oh, it's he's the guy who figures out it's Harold Hill just in the train in the very beginning number, and then he makes his
anvils.
And he sells anvil. He's Charlie. What was his name? Charlie. Oh, I wish I could remember. But he's an anvil salesman.
I'm sorry. You're a traveling salesman who sells anvils?
Yep. And one of the gags in the movie is whenever he drops his suitcase, it makes that like anvil ting ting noise. And then I remember when we did it, that thing must have weighed 90 pounds, like the suitcase they made him for. So when he'd put it down, it was a boom. And it was really just an absolutely funny gag that he was a traveling anvil salesman.
Man, I guess I haven't seen Music Man in a long time. I've completely forgotten that very funny gag.
Charlie Cowell. I just Wikipedia'd it. Charlie Cowell, a disgruntled anvil salesman who was run out of Brighton, Illinois.
I will also throw this out there that not only that, but the traveling salesman who sells something odd is one of my favorite gags. And you see one of the best ones is in the third Back to the Future movie. There's a traveling salesman who talks to Doc Brown the night before they're going to go back to the future, and then is the reason that Clara realizes Doc loves her. He is a traveling barbed wire salesman. So he's always holding this maybe like 6-inch piece of barbed wire that he's pitching to his clients. And I thought, oh my God, could you imagine having to carry that around everywhere with you? This chunk of barbed wire. And he pretended to be so proud of his company's barbed wire. So,
yep. And then here we are. You can just buy your barbed wire on Amazon. There's no personality in this world anymore.
Yeah, they've really undercut the ma and pa barbed wire shops, and they're just tragically closing from sea to shining sea. It's a tragedy.
We should really start an internet petition about that.
We do. We have so many conversations about saving brick and mortar stores, but what about just, the shoe, leather, and sidewalk sales of the world? We need to be, where's the GoFundMe campaign for those people? Doesn't exist.
Let's get on that. That's what this podcast is now. We're changing to a charity website, a fundraiser website for the lowly traveling salesmen of the world who sell anvils and barbed wire and pretend to sell trumpets.
This whole conversation is making me think of one of my favorite Onion headlines of all time. Please pardon my French, but I want to say it exactly as it is, which was a fake opinion piece called "Why Can't I Sell Any of These Fucking Bibles?"
Because they're all free. That's why.
Yeah.
Claire, tell me about some of the jobs you've had in your life, because I imagine you're somebody who's got some pretty interesting work history.
Oh, I don't know about that. My high school job, I guess, was the most unusual, was that I worked at the Fargo assembly plant, like assembling wiring harnesses for like Bobcat machines and stuff. To be clear, I was really bad at it. It did not go well. There was like a light system that like you would get a green light if you were doing it in the amount of time they thought it should take, and a yellow light if you were starting to take too long, and a red light if it definitely took too long. And I got a red every single time. And not only did I take too long, but I did it poorly. Like the quality control people always were like coming up and like showing me the things I did wrong. It was not a fun experience. I'm a person who really enjoys being good at things. Like I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's like if I feeling good at things is like a big part of what brings me joy in life. And so being really bad at my high school job definitely took me down a peg or two. But yeah, and then in college, I worked at Michael's as a cashier, and I worked in the costume shop at NDSU, like helping with like rentals and stuff.
Hold on, before we move too far. So working at Michael's,
yeah.
I imagine there's two types of customers who walk into Michael's. One is the ultra crafter who knows exactly what they're looking for, and then the complete opposite. The person who's like, I think I want to make something, so I need popsicle sticks, but I also might need fabric. And is there glue for gluing puzzles?
Yeah, I mean, that's super true. And then there's just like the people who are there to buy knickknacks. Like you can, any craft store, you can buy a million knickknacks, like little decorative pots and wedding stuff and ribbon, and the scrapbooking section is just like more stickers. Who needs this many stickers? I referred to the scrapbooking section as the anticipatory nostalgia section, where you're like deciding what in your life you're going to be nostalgic about later. I am not an anticipatory nostalgia person. I throw everything out. I hate having clutter. If I've saved something from my past, it's either because I'm afraid that whoever gave it to me will know that I threw it away, or because I genuinely think that I'm gonna pull this out and look at it later and enjoy it. So I had a bit of disdain for the scrapbookers just on an ideological level.
I am ideologically opposed to scrapbooking. I love that.
Do you ever find when my mom did a lot of, it wasn't technically scrapbooking, because to me scrapbooking is you save the program from a graduation. It's not just photo based. There's photos included, but it is other elements as well. And then photo albums, which were really popular when I was a young man, had a heyday because people all of a sudden figured out, well, I could use a cookie cutter and an X-Acto knife and turn this family photo into what is the precursor to the star wipe. And
the what?
The star wipe, which is the most overused mom video editing transition, the star wipe from one to the other.
Okay. Yep.
And so there was a company called Creative Memories that was really popular, and it was kind of like a
Creative Memories sounds like exactly what I disliked about.
Yeah. And they sold, it was the place you'd go and you'd buy sticker sets, right? And the sticker set would be, oh, the theme of this one is soccer. So it's a net and a couple balls. There's a whistle. And my mom got majorly into putting together these photo albums, and she spent, I'm going to say, probably 20 hours a photo album, and we probably had 7 or 8. And then our lake cabin burned down, and all of them burned down in our lake cabin. Aww. And she never did it again. I almost feel like she thought, oh my God, I've lost everything that I possibly could love in this world. I can't do it again. I can't risk putting my entire soul onto this page to have it destroyed in some manner.
Here we are making fun of scrapbooking, and that took a dark turn. Now I feel bad, JJ.
No, I think you should, because I think it's ridiculous, right? I think it's ridiculous that someone says, "Oh, to preserve these memories, I need to spend hundreds of dollars."
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing how much scrapbooking can cost. Although I can tell you, as a former Michael's employee, if you ever spend full price at any craft store, you are a giant sucker.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing to know that they didn't force you to sign like an NDA or something after you left the company.
Yeah, no, I mean, 1 million sales There's always sales going on, and there's always a 40% off coupon. And even in the rare occasion when there's not a 40% off coupon, all of the craft stores match each other's coupons. So just find a Hobby Lobby 40% off coupon and use that one instead. Like,
I do what I can to avoid ever going into a Hobby Lobby. The only times I go there have ever been like when frames are on sale. Like if I want to frame like a large poster, like a comic book poster or something. So I've probably gone into Hobby Lobby maybe 5 times in my life. But then I also feel like as soon as I'm in there, like the timer is on, I need to get out of there before I suffocate, because I just feel gross walking into Hobby Lobby. I don't know if it's the lighting. I don't know if it's their politics. I don't know if it's like
probably the politics.
It's probably the politics, but then also just seeing the things on shelves that I know some people pay for. And I'm like, oh my God, that is the ugliest thing. Why would you give money for that? So I get in and out as quickly as I can. And it's only when there's a frame sale. But luckily, I haven't needed to frame anything for a while. It has that physical effect on me. I would like to find a store that I could buy, discounted frames on, where I'm not having to sell my soul a little bit.
May I recommend Michael's?
So are they are different in those ways?
Oh, you've never been into Michael's? I mean,
it's been years.
It certainly has the politics removed. I mean, there's still a lot of crap in a Michael's store, and it's pretty claustrophobic. There's a special hell that's working at a Michael's at Christmas time. I don't know if it's still the case, but when I worked there, every Christmas decoration was just glitter. It was just like, take an acorn, dip it in glue, dip it in glitter, and then put 100 of them in a bin and let people dig through to find the pine cone that they want that's covered in glitter. I looked like a drag queen. I don't know, for like I had a stripper amount of glitter on me for 3 months during the winter. I don't know if that's still the fashion for Christmas decorations at craft stores, but it was when I worked there.
Glitter is my arch nemesis. I'm one of those people where if there's even a slight amount of glitter in a room, I instantly am covered in it.
It's like Anakin Skywalker in sand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate very few things in this world. Mayonnaise, mustard, and glitter are probably the 3 that I just can't get beyond. Man.
How about aioli? How do you feel about aioli?
Don't like it. It's a fancy word for mayonnaise.
So what do you put on a sandwich?
So I like, if I'm going to have, let's say, like a roast beef sandwich, I might butter the bread, but most of the time I am trying to enjoy the flavor of the beef. And so it'll be beef, cheese, and bread.
Sucker answer.
Yeah, I love that. I'm
with Claire.
I love the taste of meat. If I'm having like a hamburger, I don't do it Canadian style with mayonnaise. I dip it in ketchup. I don't put it on the burger precisely. I put it on the side of the plate so I can dictate how much I'm taking in per bite.
I even put mayo on my brats and tacos.
Ugh. On your tacos?
Yeah. I learned that at the taco shop years ago. But you got to pick the right mayo. I mean, regular mayo can work, but I'm typically aiming for like a chipotle mayo.
Sure, that makes sense.
I don't even know what to say anymore.
I'll tell you what, though, being more diet conscious, mayonnaise is one of those things where you look at the nutrition label and about have a heart attack realizing what you've been eating this whole time. Like, mayonnaise is like the most calorie dense substance on this planet, I think.
Yeah, but it's so delicious, though.
Yeah.
I think that.
But I refuse to eat light mayo. I won't do it.
Yeah, that's gross.
What about the tangy zip of Miracle Whip?
Boo, a million boos. No.
This is probably the most polarizing thing I bring up in conversations with people is
I'm ready.
Disdain for mayo. I mean, you've heard it.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard it. It's done. I will also throw this one out there. It's hard for me to walk into craft stores mainly because I just don't have that artistic ability to paint, to draw, to get something in my mind to come to fruition in front of me, whether it's gluing things together. I'm really good at building. So if you need a set of stairs, I am the man to call. But man alive, I just, walking into those craft stores, it's just like an entire store of things that will never be for me. And so it's always just a little difficult for me to get behind it. Okay, so I'm sorry, I stopped you. You said you were at the Hobby Lobby, and then the costume department in NDSU?
Yep. I mean, I got to work with Cindy Roholt and Ruth Varland, who are two of the coolest women I've ever met in my life. So that was an absolute joy and delight. I'm not particularly good at sewing, to be clear, but most of my job was just like handling the budget for the shows and spreadsheets and handling customer rentals and stuff, like costume rentals. So it wasn't I don't know. It was a fun job. It was a good resume builder, and it was fun to be around those people.
It's also, I think, an important thing. It gives you a different perspective on that aspect of theater, of seeing like what goes into costume creation. And then, when people tell me like, yep, I worked with budgets and I had to work with rental forms, I'm like, good. That is a skill that will pay off at some point in your life, knowing the ins and outs of something like that. Just because, like with Trollwood, when Tucker and I were there, the two heads of Trollwood, one was the ultra dreamer and one was the doer. And they, because each of them had the other one to bounce off of, they ended up creating this amazing program. And I think that's so important that people understand the full aspect. It's the same reason why in my high school, it was really pushed that you should, if you like to be in plays, you should do tech for at least one play. And if you're in tech, you should actually be on stage for one show so that you have a full appreciation for all the sides that it takes to put on a show. And I always thought that was very strong recommendation from our tech director and theater director.
Yeah, I mean, what I usually say in terms of my theater technical ability is that I'm very good on skilled labor. Like, don't ask me to just like do a task. Don't ask me to just make this dress. Don't ask me to make a set of stairs. But you need someone to sit there and sew buttons for an hour. You need someone to give that wall a base coat of paint. Like, I am your gal. I will show up. I will do it. I won't complain. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about theater tech as well is that it's like there to serve the actors, like barf. No, they're there to serve the show in exactly the same way that the actor is there to serve the show. And when people say that like actors should thank their technicians, that always gives me like a skeevy vibe because they're not doing it for you. Like,
right.
Yeah, you're 100% equals in creating this piece of art.
Claire, I'm curious to know as well. You sound like somebody who I would have just like an awesome time sitting with next to on a plane. And all it would take is like me seeing what you're reading right now, and then all of a sudden it's like we're in Miami already. Would you consider yourself an extrovert, an introvert, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, definitely an introvert, but I have to put on the extrovert hat a lot for the things that I love doing. Like, you can't exactly be a dance fitness instructor and an actor without being comfortable being in front of people, in some capacity. I get really tired after doing those things. So yeah, I would call myself an introvert. The things that I find the hardest about XABeat classes is like the 3 seconds in between two songs where you just have to kind of stand there for a few seconds and, contemplate your existence together and be like, oh man, is this next song going to start anytime soon? So that
I love that. Claire, what is the hardest part of your XABeat classes? Oh, the moments where I'm contemplating my existence.
Oh yeah. I mean, some people are good at it. I spent a lot of time when I first started teaching, like trying to figure out what kind of audio software I could use that would edit out those 3 seconds, but I haven't figured it
out. Well, Claire, as we're getting ready to wrap this thing up, if people are interested in XABeat, what's the best way to do a little deeper dive into that?
Sure. So I teach it on Facebook Live right now in these weird times that we have. I have a Facebook page called XABeat Dance Fitness with Claire that I just made yesterday. XABeat, by the way, is spelled XABeat. So it's with an X, like a Z sound, like xylophone or whatever. And so if you want to check that out, you certainly can. There's also a website called XABeat.com, again, spelled the same way with an X. There's, and it's taught all over Fargo specifically, but also like in the Minneapolis area. In Fargo, you can find it primarily at Courts Plus and at the YMCA. But pretty much any gym in town that has group fitness has at least one XABeat class. And yeah, you should, I encourage anyone to try it out. And if you hate it the first time, maybe still try it a second time, because it's really like, it's a set of skills that you gain over a few classes. Some people catch on right away, but some people it takes a few times. Like it's, yeah, it'll take a few times before you feel like you're good at it. It kind of depends on whether that's important to you, on whether you enjoy it.
I think anything.
That was a little convoluted, but yeah.
No, I think anything, you should give it a couple of tries if you think it, either it hits you right away or it's a little bit of a slow burn. That's how I get my friends who don't trust me when I recommend a television series. I'm like, 3 episodes. Give it 3 episodes, guys. And trust me, I think you're going to like it. And then they call back after the 4th episode and tell me I'm a liar. And they're like, they just, flat out let me know that my opinion is wrong. And I'm like, listen, they tried really hard with this Muppet Babies reboot. Let's at least appreciate what they've done, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I didn't like the first episode of Parks and Rec. Like, right. I watched the first episode and then I was like, meh. And then I left it for like 2 years. And then I came back and I binged the whole thing. Because sometimes it just takes a few to really fall in love with something.
Yeah, I think those mockumentary shows, they are character based, and so you need to fall in love with the characters.
Oh, 100%.
To want to see it. I remember watching the Office and thinking like, the British Office is The Office. This is just a cheap ripoff. And I think it was maybe 7 or 8 episodes in when they finally started to just change the course of what was happening. And I started to get into it, and thank God, because that show has provided me a lot of comfort over the years as far as getting to like know these people. I love a show that I feel like the characters are talking not directly to me, but talking to the situations in my life right now. Mm-hmm. And The Office is one of the shows that I think just nails it for so many aspects.
You find that working in talk radio is similar to the paper business?
It really is, because we have to do a lot of those meetings, like the Michael Scott meetings, where it's like, all right, guys, how are we going to be creative? Here's a PowerPoint on how to be creative.
Oh no! No!
I just think like you're killing my creativity. But yeah,
so that's less of a Michael Scott and more of a Toby Flinderson, like you're Michael Scott in that situation.
Very, very much so. We also have what I think is interesting, which is they've got a predominantly strong sales department that almost hates the other aspects of their business, like the shipping and receiving, the guys who work in the warehouse. And so most of the times I feel like a warehouse worker. If my business is like the office. And then every now and then I look at other businesses and I'm like, God, I really wish I worked for Bob Vance at Vance Refrigeration. Seems awesome over there. By the way, why did we never get a spinoff called Vance? I would watch a show about Bob Vance in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and then like you'd get Phyllis as like a side character who's just like, this crazy sexual tension between Bob Vance and this, Phyllis is coming in today.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, and I think it'd be just great. So, well, Claire, listen, we took you for longer than we even promised you. We appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm gonna try this XABeat at some point.
Hey, 2:00 today.
2:00 today.
I'm putting you on the spot.
All right. It's a matter of me changing my Cheetos time. So I will gladly make that change. And I will make sure that I don't even look at the screen during the in between the song time. So you won't even have to worry about someone checking in during that moment.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's when you should be drinking water anyway.
Oh, good. See, I'm already getting the tips. Getting the tips. Thanks, Claire. We appreciate your time. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. If I were to list craft stores in order of how much I dislike them, it would go Hobby Lobby, any fabric store, Michael's, the section of a major department store that has crafts, and then any basement that has more toothpicks than people.